Well, here we are. Thanks for your patience. I had to reboot the system here because when I did the show with David, I downloaded a program that he recommended called XSplit, and I thought, oh, well, that'll be an interesting program. And what XSplit has done is it's taken over my camera browser, so that when I go live, it shows up, but it doesn't allow me to activate my camera because that's not the camera I'm using, and I don't have any other option until I reboot the system. And now I did. And so here we are. And welcome to the show. So I apologize for the turbulence on the liftoff, but hopefully we will gather some momentum. And of course, when I do that, I lose all my tabs. All my tabs, all the things that I had ready to go for the show are now gone. So I have to go back and reconstruct them in real time. Now, this is where if I had like a guest host or something like that, they could come in and they could you know, entertain you for a while I reclaim my tabs. But let me just do this. Let me just go through history here. So the history should be okay. I should have everything ready to go. So let's do this. Okay, we got that. Yes, we have that. Okay, let me go back here. And we have that. We have that. Okay. And then let me go back here. Let's see. We have that. Okay. And one more, and we should be good, at least for the first part of the show. So let me go back here and see if I can grab that part. Excuse me. All right, there we go. And that's what we want right there. Okay. I think we're good. I think we've got it all set up. Although I do want a different background. I really didn't want this because, again, I was kind of hassling with the setup, so I couldn't really have a good background. Let me just remedy that for just a second here. If you'll just indulge me. If you'll just indulge me for 1 minute, I will have a reasonable background. Let's see, what do we have here? I wanted to be part of the thumbnail, but a decent part of the thumbnail. What do we got here? Where did I grab that? Let me see. There it is right there. All right. So I'll use the thumbnail. We'll just stick it into the background. And the Virgo and me will be happy. Let's do that. And let's do this. And let's do this. All right. There we go. That's how I wanted it. That's how I wanted it. It only took me how long to get here? but 8 minutes. So thank you. Thank you for your patience and your time and welcome. I'm flying solo today and I'm feeling just a little how do I explain how I feel today? Uh not if you really care about how I feel. But I feel a little tired today. I feel a little tired. It's been a long week, lots of content, lots of readings, and usually, when Friday rolls around, um, it's like, okay, we've reached the cascade point, but also we're in a change of season, and we are now clearly in Cancerian time, right? And tonight we have a full moon, which will be incredibly large, and it will hang on the horizon and closer than perhaps any other time. I think in what the next 18 and a half years or something like that. They call it the strawberry moon. This is what the Farmer's Almanac has with this moon. It's called the strawberry moon. So we're in a decidedly different period energetically, astrologically with Cancer. The frenetic, high wire, highly communicative, uh, sort of synapse firing energy of Gemini's in the past, right? And I kind of dug it, right? Like I liked it. I liked that energy. And we're in a very different energetic state right now. And even as I think about it, I'm like, yeah, man, cancer is all about self-care and taking care of yourself and taking care of your body and your resources and your family and your tribe. And I can feel that, right? Like I've got a little, I'm a little hoarse in my voice today, right? So it's like, okay, I got to take care of myself this weekend. Which I really don't talk about. Like I really don't like saying, "Hey, I got to do this," or "I got to do this," I mean, I try to make these podcasts and these streams mostly about the information or the ideas or whatever it is that we're talking about here. But there are times when, of course, the personality seeps through and one's life experience seeps through, and so you have to deal with it when that happens. So anyway, welcome to the show, and I hope everybody is experiencing something nurturing today, something that makes you feel like you have a soul, that you have some kind of greater emotional connection to who you are and what you do and why you're here. And that's usually what Cancer brings to us astrologically. And it's always interesting to look at the Sabian symbol for that 0 1 degree of Cancer, which is on a ship at sea, a sailor lowers one flag and raises another. And that means so many things, right? It literally is a change of season. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we go from spring to high summer, right? So that flag represents a change of season and represents a lot of other things as well, right? It can represent a change of allegiance. It can represent a change of, your attire, how you dress. Perhaps you're wearing less clothing at this time of year, right? So it's a time of change, but it's also, and I get into this in the newsletter, which is going to be sent out pretty soon. And all you locals members you'll get the newsletter today. I'm going to put it inside locals today. And it's also about the changing of allegiance and reassessing our attitude and our beliefs and in a lot of ways our associations around certain things. And sometimes when we do that, that can be really difficult. It can be very, very difficult because we have to admit that the things that we're looking at and that we have to reassess our position with isn't always popular or politically correct or fuzzy or warm or feel good, right? Sometimes the things that we have to reassess can be, bitter roots to chew on. And we're going to cover some of that today. And what I'm going to try to do is there are two things that have gotten my attention, which is really generally what I want to talk about. Like something has gotten my attention, and I feel like it needs to be addressed. And I'm going to try to connect these two things that are very disparate, but also have an interesting kind of connection in some ways. And in an attempt to do that, hopefully I'll be successful and I'll be able to make that bridge. And again, some of the material that I'm going to discuss here, at least at the first part of the show, it may be difficult for some people to listen to and swallow, and maybe even admit to that this is actually going on in our country. So let's do this. Let's see who's here. I always have to give a little shout out here and see who's in the chat. We've got my man DJ MC. What's going on? Healing Heart Rosie, working but listening. Always good. Hey, Susie Gemini's back. I hope you're doing well, Susie. Susie had a little incident with her wing. And we know that angels need their wings to fly. So, Susie, I hope you're doing better. Literally just got the notification. I literally just put it up. But we're glad you're here, Road Trip 1981. Let's see. TJ, my man Thomas, he's here. He's literally here. Who else do we have? There's my man Ryan, the introspective woodworker. Steve, Thor at the door. Yes, it's not Thor's day, but anytime Steve's here, it's always a great appearance. Amy Gill, what's happening, Amy? And hello, there she is. Fantastic. What's happening, CC? Warlanda, Southwest Virginia. I did not have any coffee today. Let me think about that. I did not have any coffee today. You're my reminder that I did not have my daily dose of the black bean. But I did have a diet Rockstar energy drink. Tundar, good to see you. Yes, it is. Full strawberry moon. That's a weird moon, right? The Capricorn moon. It's like it's big and effulgent, and it's that luscious ripe red strawberry, right? Just hanging there on the horizon, and it's a Capricorn moon, right? Like it's a really interesting juxtaposition because the Capricorn moon is kind of austere, right? Like people that have Capricorn moons in their chart, they know how to triumph over hardship. They do. Home life not always easy with that Capricorn moon. Mom kind of cool, kind of distant, kind of hey, not going to give you a lot of warm and fuzzies. You better grow up fast. A lot of people with Capricorn moons, I've seen this with Capricorn rising and Capricorn moons, where they have to take on the role of a parent fairly early in their lives, like the second mother. Sometimes if it's a man with Capricorn rising, they'll take on the role of the second father, especially if there's a divorce and they're the oldest male, which is a tough position to be put in, right? So we get this big juicy full moon, and it's in Capricorn. So hey, make them. It'll be a good spectacle, nonetheless, and it's going to be hanging pretty low for about 3 nights. So wherever you are, if you have some overcast, you may be able to witness it tomorrow or even the next night. And again, I think I read somewhere that this is the lowest or closest that the moon is going to be in the next 18 and a half years. So, there's always been this idea, and I think that there's some merit behind it, that when there's a full moon, people kind of lose their shit, right? And they go a little bit crazy. That's where we get the word lunacy from. And it'll be interesting to see, how things shake out over the next 72 hours, right? Because we're talking about proximity. If the moon is full, we know it's full. We know that, if Joan is in the chat, she can attest to the fact that she doesn't like to do surgeries on a full moon because there tends to be more blood in the head and more blood in the mouth. And she's, witnesses over years and years and years of doing dental work, right? So there's some physiological and biological evidence that says that there's some correlation to this idea that that there's this kind of rise, right, in blood to the head. And so what happens when there's that blood rush under intense and heavy full moon? We'll find out. It'll be interesting to watch over the next 72 hours. Now, the Capricorn moon generally has a lot of restraint to it, but I feel like it's also an interesting contrast. And part of what I'm going to get into today does reflect that contrast. Because when we think of Capricorn, what do we think of? We think of Saturn and we think of the elite, right? The L and the people that are at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid. The pyramid is a powerful symbol for Capricorn. Right? Capricorn is the mountain, and the pyramid is a kind of another occult or esoteric version of the mountain. Some mountains might even be pyramids. In modern society, the mountain is the skyscraper, right? And the top floor is where the CEO hangs out and has reached the top of the pyramid. And in fact, in San Francisco, they actually have the Transamerica Pyramid, which for a long time was the home of Bank of America. I don't know if it's still there now, but it was right there at the top of the pyramid. I went there one time. And I was working for a magazine, and we did a photo shoot with the guy who ran Bank of America. It was last name was Clausen. I think his first name was C.W. Clausen or something like that. And we literally walked into the stratosphere, right, the upper reaches of power, and they were having a board meeting at the Transamerica Pyramid. It was kind of a sneak behind the scenes, right? A.W. Clausen was his name. And he was really happy to get his picture taken. He was more than happy with his picture taken. Anyway, it's just another symbol, right? It's a symbol of achievement. It's a symbol of culmination, and it's a symbol of rising to the top. So that's what Capricorn represents. And Cancer is very different. If Capricorn is the top of the mountain or the top of the pyramid or the top of the Transamerica Pyramid, Cancer, is the backyard barbecue, right? Cancer is the folk. Cancer is the village. Cancer is the family. Cancer is your tribe, right? So it's a very, very different orientation. Capricorn is vertical, Cancer is horizontal. And so when we have a dynamic like this full moon, right, it can be very evident, right, that we're living in a society, in a world where there at a cultural level seems to be a greater strata of economic deprivation or privation, right? And I don't think that that's an unfair observation to make. A lot of people are really struggling financially, and there are some people who are not. And I'm not here to turn the show today into a kind of a rambling meditation and rant on class. But I think we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in a different kind of way. That really, again, this really grabbed and I have mixed feelings about one of the things that I'm going to play you. I have mixed feelings about it, but I need to play it anyway. And it enters into our discussion about what's going on economically, what's going on with the strength of our communities or the lack thereof. It goes along with the lack of leadership. And all that lack of leadership, by the way, that's all by design. There's no attempt to course correct and have any real leadership. But it all plays into it, right? It all plays into it, and it plays into, and this gets back to what's his name, Steve Pachenik, and Steve Pachenik was on Alex Jones, and he was on fairly frequently, and Pachenik talked about accomplishing something that was part of their stated goal. Like, who are they, right? Like, who's Pachenik really work for? The guy, I mean, the guy is a deep state spook. He probably, is a card carrying member of the CIA, the Mossad, any number of, spook agencies, right? Like, he just feels like that kind of guy. But he was talking about that the goal was to simultaneously create centralization and decentralization. So what he meant by that was that there would be a centralization of power, and that power would rest in the hands, theoretically, in the executive branch, which would be Trump. At least it was at that time. And the decentralization was and I think he would term this as the balkanization of the United States, meaning that the states would become less of a union, right, and more separate. So that would be the decentralized platform. And then the centralized platform would be still having a powerful figure in the executive branch. And that's what they were going for, right? That was the sort of the alchemy, the political and economic alchemy that they were working on. And I think that they were fairly successful, uh, because right now, as we don't really operate as a country anymore, we operate as a state of fiefdoms or vassal states, right? What happens in California is very different than what happens in Louisiana. Louisiana just decided that they were going to make the Ten Commandments a requirement in every classroom, right? So Louisiana passed that law that they're going to teach the Ten Commandments in every classroom. And you won't find that in California at all, right? So this is kind of what I'm talking about. And some states are passing laws to not have CBDCs, or some states are passing laws against chemtrails, and others are just leaving it, right? So we are no longer United States. And yet we still have a highly stratified, centralized core of power. And it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, right? So it's a really unusual um, political, I'll just use the word alchemy, right? They've managed to do something that is fairly unique. I'm not saying it's good, by the way, but they've created enough fragmentation and decentralization while maintaining their central core of power. The other thing that Pachenik talked about was that the Constitution was just useless, right? It was one of those pieces of paper that was just getting in the way of things, and we've heard that before from other people, and including Mike Johnson, by the way, who, if he ever has the power to do so, he will fire up a constitutional convention, and basically, along with him and his other charismatics, will attempt to rewrite certain parts of the Constitution. And he's been pushing that for a long time. Anyway, I don't want to get caught in the weeds there, but the idea here is to kind of look at this idea between the so-called haves and the ever increasing have-nots. Now, that's not to say that you have to follow that script, right? That's not to say that you have to step in line and um, take that unholy communion, that you're going to be one of the have-nots, right? Or in order to play the game, you have to be one of the sociopathic halves. You can chart your own course. This is very important to understand, right? This is a very important piece here. So what I'm going to share with you is something more on a collective level, that ultimately trickles down and hits people, right? But I'm not showing this to you. I'm not going to bring these connections together to, number one, disempower you, right? That if anything, when you look at this, you should ask yourself, how do I stay out of this net, or how do I stay out of this web? That's important, right? That's a really important question to ask. Um, but I think the other bigger picture piece here is that when looking at some of the material that I'm going to bring up, we also have to take into account future generations and how are our children and grandchildren going to live in this place? What kind of opportunities will be available to them? Will they have a fighting chance? Right? Will they knock down the what you call it? I'm having a blank moment here. The Supreme Court knocked down the ruling that colleges have to admit people based on their race or based on their racial identity, and based by percentage, right? They've knocked that down. Equal opportunity, right? They've kind of knocked that down. So that's kind of a big step, right? It's like a big step in saying, look, it doesn't matter who you are, right? You have the ability based on your supposed skill set, meritocracy, and motivation to find something and have a piece of the pie, right? So this is a really huge thing that the Supreme Court did, and so theoretically, right, that also kind of carves into the quota world where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna move away from having these quotas that we have to fill now, to the degree that has been like pre, I don't know, 1975. That's a whole other question, right? Because some companies are still locked into diversity, equity, inclusion, right? We're still having to deal with that. And when I say we, I'm talking about everybody, right? I'm talking about able-bodied people, or people who aren't able-bodied, but people who have an able spirit, right? That don't necessarily want to have a handout, right? They don't want to, automatically go to third base. That there are people that take pride in their work. There are people that find it almost insulting to be able to have a position that's given to them, not based on any kind of merit or based on any kind of ability to show any level of expertise. So some people, still have what I would call a healthy pride. And it doesn't matter what skin color you are in that direction. It doesn't matter, right? There are people who could easily take advantage of affirmative action and equal opportunity, and they don't want to. It's just they're not. It's like, no, I don't need this, right? It's almost in some ways insulting to them. It's like, thank you, white liberal corporate democratic government for offering this to me, but I don't need it, right? And if I take it, in some ways, it lessens the value of my contribution and worth. Now, Clarence Thomas may disagree, but that's a whole other story, right? So that's happening, and I think it's a good thing, right? But there's a lot more going on here, and how long it takes to correct some of these measures economic measures that are absolutely punitive. I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't think Trump is the answer around this, by the way. He just came out yesterday on a podcast, on some kind of a podcast, and he said that he'll give a green card to any foreign national who's in college and graduates. And that includes a 2-year university. When I heard that, I think it's fucking something Joe Biden would say. Right? Like why is he talking about this? Why is he bringing this up? I mean, is this the string his handlers are pulling? And that's gotten a lot of blowback on social media, except for Tim Pool, of course. He thinks it's a great idea. So some of what I'm going to talk about, excuse me, today, has to do with how we got here, where we are, and not necessarily where we're going. Although clearly there's a possible future here that may take a while to turn this ship around. Before I get into it, thank you again for being here. Hit the like button if you like what you're hearing today. Hit the subscribe button if you want to hear more, and hit the bell if you want to be notified. You can always buy me a cup of coffee. I don't have the link in the show notes. Maybe somebody can put that in the chat. And everybody that supported the show and purchased a cup of coffee or multiple coffees, thank you. It means a lot. I really appreciate it. And you can always join us over on Locals as well. Okay. So let me map out where we're going. And I'm going to play you a video. And I saw this video come up on Twitter a couple days ago. And I saw it. I did not want to watch it for a number of reasons. But I forced myself to watch it last night just to take the temperature and see where we are with what I'm talking about. All right. So some of you may have seen it. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a lead in. Apparently, the guy who did this video has a painting business. He can't get ahead. He's dealing with the high price and cost of everything, which is true, right? Everything costs more now. Costs way more. And wages have clearly not risen to the occasion and matched the price increases. And no matter what this current administration tells you, inflation is real. It's a real thing. And I have some thoughts about inflation, but I want to play this video first. And this is a guy who is struggling. And this is how he processes his struggle. It's a hard video to watch, but I'm going to play it anyway. So here we go.
I don't know how any of you guys are going and going and going. I know you gotta be at the same level of mental health as me. Every day it's something new between the fucking news and the fucking stupid Biden and stupid Trump. And this country's fucked. Every day we're spending more and more money. None of us are getting ahead. The rich people are the ones that are fucking getting ahead. I'm tired of struggling. I've done everything I can. I'm trying to be a good man. I take care of my daughter. I take care of my wife the best I can. I can't keep going. Every day it's something new. And then on top of that, as if you're not trying to spend money, you have to. Fucking everything's expensive. I own a painting company. I still can't fucking make it. I'm fucking trying, man. I can't look at my daughter and my wife and know I'm failing. I'm fucking Everybody wake up. It's time to stand up. It's time to be tired of this. It's our turn to fucking eat. I want to eat. I want my family to eat. I want you guys to eat. Stand up. Let's go. Stand up, man. Let's fucking eat. I'm tired. Let's help each other. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't care what fucking color you are. If you are not eating and you're struggling, eat with me. Let's struggle together then. Let's be a team.
That's a really hard video to watch. On so many levels. Number one, clearly the man is in pain, right? He's just in pain. And based on, I don't know anything about his life, but if you believe his story, right, that he's trying to have his painting business, you know, he's a laborer, be successful. It's not working, right? It's not working, and his efforts are not being rewarded, right? So when you look at something like that, you know, it's painful. It's very painful because how often do you see guys cry? You know, for him to get to that point and cry like that probably took a lot, right? And probably no outlet for any kind of therapy or religious or spiritual counseling. And even if you had it, you know, it's hard. You know, it's a hard fucking life. And when you go through the comments of that video, it's really they're really interesting to read. And some of them feel for him. Some of them chastise him for being a bitch and crying about his lot in life. Others are telling him to buy Bitcoin. Like, just buy Bitcoin, you'll be fine. Or some other digital currency, right? And there was one comment in there where the guy said, unfortunately, we're at a point in history where labor is not commensurate with reward. And basically, what he said was is that the current economy rewards uh, technological risk and innovation more than labor, and I would say that that's probably true. So it's a very difficult video to watch, and it surfaced a couple days ago, and I thought, here we go, we're coming into cancer season, right? And here's a guy who has a real challenge on his hands, and and to me, it's all very Cancerian. You know, he's got his own business, he's working for himself, he's talking about providing for his family, and then he can't keep up, and he sees, you know, the elites, and you know, they're eating and he's not eating, and he doesn't care what color you are, what your political creed or affiliation is, right? Like, stand up and let's eat together, while they burn the food processing plants, claim that there's bird flu, and shut the water off in Idaho. Right? That's a whole other story. So that video hit me. Like, I didn't want to watch that video because I knew it was going to be sad. And I knew it was going to be borderline pathetic, right? But years ago, if you go back on my website, I used to do a lot of writing. And I did a post somewhere, I don't know, 2010, 2011. And it was about a movie that was based on a book. And the movie was called White Man's Burden. And it starred Harry Belafonte and John Travolta. So the movie is set in the future. And the future is where the social tides have changed. And that the elites of society are black. And the underclass are white. And in that movie, whites are portrayed as being genetically inferior. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the clip, which is the trailer. I'm not going to play the sound because I don't want this to get marked or demonetized, and YouTube does shit like that. So let me tee this thing up here. Where is it? Right here. Okay. So I'm gonna mute this, and I'm going to kind of narrate it as it goes along, because I kind of know what it talks about. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is from 1995. Okay. And the first thing you're going to see is, so this is John Travolta. He plays Lewis Pinnock. And he is part of the so-called white Caucasian working underclass. And that's Kelly Lynch. That's his wife, right? So they live a very kind of blue collar, hard scrabble existence. And he's having a hard time fending for his family. That's his scene right here, where he's really kind of wrapping his head around the difficulties of his life. And there they are, sharing their little dreams. Okay, so he has to go deliver a package to Harry Belafonte's character. And he sees, as he goes into the mansion, he sees Harry Belafonte's wife. And there we go. He sees her seeing him. Right. And then, so there they, so here, this is a picture of the elite in the future. Right. And they're going to fire him. So he's fired because he saw something that the other guy didn't like just by him seeing his wife is now tainted. So Lewis is going to lose his job, and it puts him on edge. He's trying to get his job back here, and he won't see him. Right. So now he's had enough. And he's going to get a gun, and he's going to kidnap Harry Belafonte. So this is what happens next. He takes him hostage. And then he takes him into his world, right? He takes him into the white ghetto to show him what his side of the world looks like now. See, everything is reversed here. So I thought that this was quite interesting. Like I have known about this film and this book for quite a while, and I had written about it on my website. And I thought to myself, is this possible? Right? Could this ever happen? Could the cultural roles flip in our society? Right? And there are some people who would say, "Hey, that's a good thing." Right? Let that painter guy, who obviously is the byproduct of some kind of privilege. I can tell you everything you want to know about that painter guy. That painter guy came up in a fucking blue collar family. Probably, uh, some degree of alcohol abuse, some degree of, you know, um, jagged relationships inside the family. Wouldn't be surprised if this family got divorced. That's where that guy came from. Right? So he picks up a trade and becomes a painter. Well, it's an honest trade. And it's an honest trade if you're not competing with other people who will paint, your somebody's house for less than you will. Now there's a whole raft of, you know, theoretical unfair competition. And so he has to lower his rates to paint so that he can be competitive with another underclass who has become part of the system, right? So instead of, I suppose if he wanted to, he could do high-end paint jobs, right? He could do high-end paint jobs and he could charge a shit ton for high-end paint jobs. And then he could hire the workers who would work for less, right? But that's a different kind of mentality. And I'm not sure he has that kind of mentality. I don't even know the bones of his business, but he's running a business and it's not working. And I'm assuming a lot of it has to do with the fact that, number one, there's less money in the system for people to hire him. And number two, he has to lower uh, his wage for service based on the fact that there are other people in the system who will do the same thing for less. Right. Um, so I thought to myself, could we ever get to a point where that reality that is being portrayed in that movie could become real? Like that would be sort of the new social norm or the new social standard. And it always lingered in the back of my brain, right? Because a lot of times when you see movies like that or books like that, um, they could fall into the camp of predictive programming or hidden in plain sight, right? And that's kind of maybe like this model where the two of those meet. So what I want to do is I want to play you a couple of clips of Eric Adams in New York City. And basically he's saying the same thing in two different settings. Okay? So let's do this one. That's the second one I want to play. So he uses this phrase numerous times. He loves this phrase. Okay, let me see if I can let me grab it. Okay. So here we go.
They need to see you. Deputy Mayor Williams Ison, Deputy Mayor Mira Josie, Deputy Mayor Amazar, Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer. Have you ever seen this much chocolate leading the city of New York? And then go down the line. Look who's here. This is representative of the city. That's why people are hating on me. You trying to figure out why they're hating on me? They hating on me because how many of you go to church? Man, this is a Matthew 21:12 moment. Jesus walked in the temple. He saw them doing wrong in the temple. He did what? He turned the table over. I went to City Hall to turn the table over. First women police commissioner of color. First Spanish-speaking police commissioner. First Spanish-speaking correction commissioner.
Can't even fucking say it.
We must.
So let me play you another clip of Adams where he's essentially saying the same thing, but he's giving away a bit more of the plot. So here we go. Here's Eric Adams.
And not only that, what do? First woman of color to be the commissioner. First Spanish speaking to be the commissioner in the police department. First Trinidadian to be a deputy mayor. First Dominican to be a deputy mayor. First African American to be the first deputy mayor. Second African American to be the chief of staff. Why? The first one was by David Dinkins. When you look at our administration, first Indian American to be a deputy mayor, first Filipino American to be a deputy mayor, first Korean American to head small business services. You look at our administration and you will see for yourself, we got all of this chocolate running the city. And you're trying to figure out why they're hating on me? Listen, folks, I came into office, we were spending pennies in women and black-owned businesses. We're now spending billions of dollars.
Okay, so essentially what he's saying is that they are allocating public money. So if you live in New York City and you pay taxes and you've been living in New York City for years and your parents lived in New York City for years, let's say you're a second or third generation New Yorker, and let's say you're Italian, or let's say you're Irish, or let's say you're Polish or whatever, right? Your tax dollars, which you've been paying all of your life, right, are going to a specific group. And that specific group is being chosen by Eric Adams. And that means that whether you're Italian or Irish or German or whatever, Polish, that he's not sitting down and saying, we need more Polish-owned businesses or we need more Irish-owned businesses. He's just completely circumventing that. And then he's using that public money to incentivize his voter base and to, theoretically create businesses. And look, I got no problem with a business run by any company of anybody of any color, as long as it's a good fucking business. At the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? If it's a good business. But the economic playing field now, and this has been determined for a while. This all started under Obama, by the way. And Obama was putting pressure on banks to make loans to quote unquote minority candidates who, in the bank's minds, were not physically qualified to receive the loans. It had nothing to do with race, right? They basically, the bank says, hey, look, if you have collateral or you have a track record of having loans and paying them off, you'll get a loan, right? That's the basic fundamental premise of banking. And we know that there's a lot of wiggle room in there with banking, just to be, fair, right? But this all started under Obama, and he started to put pressure on banks to open up lending to people who would not normally be able to get a loan. Again, I don't really necessarily have a problem with that, right? But what's happened now is that it became an industry, right? So if you look at Eric Adams and his plan to give the migrants a pay card, right? Like, oh, we're going to give them a debit card each month. Well, who did he choose to do that? He didn't choose the best available payment option. He didn't have a citywide bid on who would provide the service at the best and the lowest interest rate to the city. No. What he did is he awarded the contract to a buddy of his, right, who again is part of his community. So ultimately, I believe this is problematic. And you may say, oh, well, it's the sour grapes. No, I'm not. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. This is fucking America, theoretically. And this is a place that's built on a meritocracy, theoretically, right? And when I see that guy crying his ass off because he can't get ahead, he can't get a loan, and there are obstacles for him to be able to even be competitive in his own marketplace, you look around, you ask yourself, well, what else is going on out there? And who is prospering, or who is or are getting breaks? And I think it's pretty clear. And a lot of this also has to do with essentially courting your voter base. Because if Eric Adams does this, right, what does it help him do? It helps him stay elected. Like all these people that he's giving these breaks to, these no interest loans or low interest loans, or however they're wired, right? And giving all of these commissions to people who meet a particular criterion, he's not really doing that because he wants to be the so-called people's candidate. He's building a voter base. He wants to stay elected. He wants all of these people who ultimately wind up being the majority, if you put them all together, to reelect him again and again and again and again. You can make the same case for Joe Biden, right? The same case is there for Biden, because Kamala Harris has talked about this, and they've had these programs that are available for, people that meet specific requirements that fall under, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And why is Biden that? You see, this is the new welfare state. It used to be like, okay, well, we're gonna keep people on the plantation, by creating a massive welfare state. And the welfare state will make them beholden to us on so many levels, right? You get your WIC card, you get whatever, just vote for these guys. But that model is eroded and it's changing. Now you can make a case that this is a better model, right? You could theoretically make, well, at least they're not on welfare. Okay, I would submit to that. Maybe it's a better model, but it's still the same kind of relationship. Like, I will grease your wheels, and when it comes time to keep me in power and this system and this regime in power, you will grease my wheels. So it's reciprocal theoretically, right? The challenge here is that if you are not a part of that group, right? You could be dude in the SUV with the orange hoodie with tears streaming down his face. And I think any American with any sense, any human, I'll use the word human, any human with any sense of dignity and pride, and I say pride in a meaningful way, not in a prideful way. Any sense of dignity and pride and integrity and character would vehemently rebel against this. Vehemently rebel against it. And that theoretically the playing field should theoretically be equal, right? And there's some people say, well, it's just not that equal. You know, it doesn't work that way. Well, you know, my parents were fucking dirt ass poor. I mean, literally, my mother had to, you know, go to the bathroom in a wooden outhouse for a lot of the time she grew up. Indoor plumbing was like a fucking luxury with my mother. On my father's side, my grandmother was so poor that she had to outsource them to foster homes. Right. So these are two people that came from very poor environments and, you know, somehow managed to piece their lives together. Right. So this idea that we all are descended from, you know, some fruit or line of privilege is, I think it ultimately is horseshit. You know, and when I was growing up, you know, it's like in the 80s. I look at the 80s as kind of peak culture. And I'm like, man, I missed out. Like, I missed out because I wasn't into it. Right. I was not into being a yuppie. I was not into conspicuous consumption. I was not into any of that. Right. It was like, hey, here's a path for you. You know, go put on your Izod shirt, go vote for Reagan. And it's all good, right? There's your cultural inheritance right there, brother. Just step right into it. And I was like, I have nothing, I have no interest in that whatsoever. So, you know, if that really is sort of the penultimate form of the white privilege peak 80s culture and society, I was nowhere to be found. Maybe some of you were, and I don't have any ill will towards you at all. If you took advantage of it, that's what was happening in the culture, right? But, you know, we're at a place where all of this is very precarious, right? So that if you look around and you see what's going on with learning in elementary schools, oh, well, we don't teach cursive anymore. Oh, well, we don't, you know, math is racist. Yeah. Oh, these ideas. No, we're not going to go there. What is the net effect of that? The net effect of that is that people who send their kids to public schools are going to basically have a group of children who are semi-illiterate, right? The elites will always have their kids in private schools, always. They will never miss out on their education, always. But what we're seeing here, right? What we're seeing here is this transference of power and resources and equity and ultimately money, right? To displace and dislodge the system and to create more of a sense of chaos, disorder, and despair. And this is all by design. It's all by design. Now, at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, when all the smoke clears, who would be the ruling class of this country? I don't think it's going to be the Eric Adams of the world, right? I think ultimately the Eric Adams, no matter how slick he is, how much power he has, or he thinks he has, even though he's a 33rd degree Mason, because he was just awarded that title last year, along with the police commissioner and one of his other buddies. All three of them went to Gracie Mansion and got their 33rd degree certification, right? At the end of the day, he's a pawn. And he may think he is, running the big apple and greasing all the right wheels and empowering and giving the right jobs and the right loans to the right people so that he stays there forever. But he is mistaken. If you've ever listened to Yuri Bezmenov, he talks about what happens when the true believers in the revolution, and trust me, Eric Adams believes in the revolution, right? He believes in the revolution. When I say revolution, his revolution is using government as a cudgel, using government as an economic tool of power, right? And when you get into that model where, Adams plays the bank and essentially doles out all these loans or dispensations or whatever you want to call them, right? Now we're entering into kind of a statist model of governance, right? It doesn't have a lot to do with privatization, right? This is the government getting involved and having this status mechanism, the status engine driving everything. So he's a revolutionary. And Bezmenov talks about when the revolution is over, right? When the revolution is over and the smoke is cleared, all the useful idiots they're the first to go. Right. So it's people like Eric Adams or people who believe that they're in control of the situation because they have been granted for a brief period of time keys to the wheels of industry and power, right? His job is really about disassembling. It has very little to do with building. It's about disassembling the culture. And once the culture is disassembled, and once it is decoupled from its original moorings, and the new system comes in, he's irrelevant. And he doesn't know that. He's totally irrelevant. And all the people around him that he appointed will be irrelevant. They'll say, thank you very much. We appreciate your effort. Now go over there to that nice little gated community we've set up for you that you won't ever return from. I mean, this is what happens with revolutions. And Eric Adams is, he's at the tip of the spear of a revolution. And it probably, at the end of the day won't end well for him if it goes down that path. Right. So I need to bring this up because what we're seeing here, right, we're seeing this transference of power that isn't just about equality or equity or any of the things that I think a lot of us in our hearts kind of believe in, right? Like, yeah, like it'd be great if everybody had their own opportunity to do something and profit from it. But this is something completely different. It's completely different. And it is about ultimately um, changing the economic rules of order so that ultimately the guy in the SUV has absolutely zero hope or faith in his life, right? Like what would happen if he went to New York and said, Mayor Adams, I'm so inspired by you in what you've done for this city. I've moved my family here. Can I get a loan, a low interest loan for painting? And oh yeah, and my economic status uh, fits your criterion. You think you get that loan? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So Americans ultimately, whatever, and this is the Cancerian side, I think, of the whole um, discussion. You have to wake up here, right? We really have to wake up, and and again, there are people. I don't care what color you are. There are people that have dignity, character, pride, and they're old school, and this is not the world they want to live in. Period. End of story. I know plenty of so-called Black and African American people who are repelled by this man, and that they are repelled by this um it's another version of the kind of crony capitalist system, but it's a different version of, right? And they repel against it. They're not into it. Right? So it's not just it's just a black white thing. No, it's not. No, it's not. What it is ultimately is that it's a human thing. And what Eric Adams is trying to do is ultimately he is in the business of dehumanization, right? Oh, they hate me because of this. They hate me because no, you're not. They don't hate you because of this. If you're hated because you're a corrupt motherfucker. Right? It has nothing to do with the fact that hey, look, man, if you got the best chocolate up there, who gives a shit? If that chocolate is kick ass and whoop ass and knows what the fuck they're doing, great. Great. Bring the chocolate to the top, right? But is that really the case? Were the best candidates appointed? Right? Were the best commissions hired? I would venture to say that that's probably not the case at all. So is that different than any other system? Uh, maybe not. Maybe it's all the same, right? But there are degrees. There are clearly degrees, and and again, I do believe that the overall tenor is changing. Like people are waking. Let me show you. Let me show you the difference here. Just because I want to be fair, right? As I go down this path. I don't know how many of you follow King Randall on Twitter or follow him in general, but this guy is exceptional. He basically has started his own school and home for young men, and he teaches them about everything that they need to know about life and responsibility and how to work together. So let me show you a few of his videos, right? So these are basically his kids, and they're all boys. When I say his kid, he's taking them on.
We got a positive
clamp.
and then we got a negative clamp. We want to make sure they're going on the right thing in the car. Basically, you can see from right here that this one's red and this one's red, so that would mean this one would be on this one.
Okay, that works. All right.
And then this one is black, as you can see in the back. So this one will go right here.
What is black?
Black means negative.
Okay.
And then you would do the same with.
All right. Take my part.
You would do the same with these on the other car.
So what is the other car?
The dead car.
The dead car. All right.
So these young boys most of them don't have fathers, and they all live together, right? These guys live together. It's not like, hey, let's go over to King Randall's house. So he's teaching them the basic fundamentals of how to jumpstart a car.
Same on this car. You see that this one's red. So plug this one up to this car. We're gonna put this one on this one because it's black and it's negative.
Okay, so it goes beyond that. Let me show you another one. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is about learning, meritocracy, growing, being self-sufficient, not looking to have a fucking handout, right? So here's his same guys right here. And what are they doing? Right now, they're putting down floors.
So always look at what you're grabbing. I thought they were. You can barely see it, but you go get your square. Go ahead and lay it in. All right. Yeah, it's right there. And my brother that pencil.
You bought your tray.
Yep, grab me a full piece. Grab me a full piece.
Like screw that one back in.
Boom, done. So this, all this needs to be built up to that wall right here, and then we'll finish out that room. Yeah.
Most of y'all tried it.
Need work. Y'all should have seen this harness before. The drill got a button on it right here. Spin right, spin left. Y'all know righty tighty, lefty loose. I'm gonna let Aiden on this other side. And each time I'm gonna get a new person to help me out. And don't go all the way. Kind of ease onto the trigger. It'll come up. All right. What's in my hand right now? A mallet and what?
So the reason I'm showing this to you is that he started, this guy, King Randall, I think he's about 24 years old. He started all of this on his own. There's no government funding involved whatsoever. And his goal with these boys, and they live together, right, is to teach them all these different skills, right? Life skills, learn how to put a floor down, learning how to look each other in the eye, shake each other's hand, work with a dead battery in a car. They place, I mean, to me, right, like this is a fucking model. It's not the Eric Adams model. I'm sorry. Right? It is not the Eric Adams model. Why? Because this guy has decided, I'm going to do this on my own, and I'm going to teach these boys basically how to live. They don't have any dads. And there's no money involved. I mean, there is money, but there's no government money. He doesn't take any government money whatsoever. Right? So I'm just showing you this because there are alternatives to what we just saw with Eric Adams. This guy's got character. This guy's got integrity. And what is he attempting to do? Transfer it and pass it on to these young men so they don't have to be the Eric fucking Adams of the world. And that they could be either self-sufficient or at the very least have enough self-confidence and self-esteem where they're individuated humans, right? It's a different model completely. So I wanted to bring it into the discussion because it's a contrast to the other model, which has very, in my estimation, has very little to do with any of the things we're talking about here. Very little. You're not rewarded by the character or the merit of your integrity or your value or your worth. You're rewarded because you are a demographic that pays off. And I will say this, at the expense of other people who may be more worthy and worthwhile, and they may not be part of that demographic. I think that world is coming to an end. The Eric Adams world is coming to an end. But I had to show you the contrast, right? And this, what we're looking at here, and this other model is going to take time. And it's going to take time as we divest ourselves from the system. And divesting yourself from the system means you have to look at the system in a way that you may not want to look at it, right? And you may want to say, man, this is really fucked up. You know, this is really, really fucked up. How does this guy in his SUV wind up being a bawling, crying mess while he's trying to bust his ass and, pay for all the things that his family needs? Meanwhile, Eric Adams is handing out loans like fucking candy to people that theoretically might even be less qualified. And then you have to ask yourself, well, is there an agenda around that? You may not necessarily like the answer you get back from yourself. Or you can say, oh, well, you're just racist. No, I'm not racist, right? What I am is I am somebody who is sick and tired of the fucking political machine. And this is just the latest iteration of the political machine. And listen, I'm of the mind that all boats rise. Right? I have no problem with anybody from any class or any group prospering in this country, but it should never be done at the expense of another person or another group. I don't care. I've stated this for years, right? Even if you're white, it shouldn't be done at the expense of another group. Period. End of story. All boats rise. So I wanted to show you the King Randall stuff because it is a very different model. In it's grassroots and it's just taken off, right? And this whole Pluto in Aquarius is going to be very different than Pluto in Capricorn. And I think that what you're seeing with Eric Adams is kind of the sort of the last dying breath of Pluto in Capricorn, even though you say, well, that's all very diverse and Aquarian and and it's all very kind of rainbow chocolate at the end of the day. Yeah, but the whole idea around Aquarius is that the individual is theoretically only as strong as the group, and the group is only as strong as the individual, right? That is really the equation for Aquarius. And I don't think you would find that inside of Eric Adams' world or inside of Eric Adams' city government. But if you went to King Randall's house, I bet you'd find that. I bet you would find that Aquarian experience, right? So I wanted to shift gears here. I needed to just get that out, right? I just needed to get that out and kind of illustrate how far down the path this thing has gone. And then, who theoretically is, getting sort of the sharp end of the stick, right? And then also show you that it's not completely that way in a particular community, and that there are emergent models that are very different. All right. So I just want to be clear about that. I wanted to shift gears here, and this is something that I want to talk about, and how I talk about it will be limited by the amount of evidence or the amount of context that I can talk about it, because there's so much around it that is really bizarre and strange. So let me see if I can find the initial piece of information that I wanted to send to you. Or I want to share with you. Hold on. Give me one sec. All right. Hold on. I can find it here. All right. Not sure where I'm going to be able to access this. Hold on. All right, hold on. I think I know where I can get it. Because it's kind of important that I have this one root of the story. Getting there. Getting there. Okay, let me just see if I can cut to the chase here, so you guys don't have to wait for. I found it. There we go. No, that's not it. All right. It has to do with Dr. Mercola. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I almost don't want to talk about it unless I have all the information at hand. Let me just see if I can scope it really quickly. But here, let me give you the thumbnail. So, Dr. Mercola, Joseph Mercola, who was under a huge amount of fire during the COVID story, right? He under huge fire, and he was a target of the government and a lot of people who were in the anti-vax movement, right? Like they got hit hard. They got hit real hard. Okay, so here's the story. This goes all the way back to February, and it's just starting to kind of come out now. And this kind of dovetails in some ways with what David and I were talking about, but it's different, right? It's kind of a different take on it. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with what's happening here, but Mercola, who is an absolute giant when it comes to the alternative health world, has had a major shakeup of his company, and it started all the way back in February. And I just recently found out about it. And you know how we talked about how channels or psychics or astrologers were, advocating that people would get the jab? Well, apparently Mercola has taken on a psychic and a channel who is making, influencing the business. So let me read this. This is Natural Products Insider. I don't know how much you guys know about this. Dr. Mercola consulted with psychic before axing top executives. The CEO of Mercola and 2 other brand executives were terminated without warning last week. And video evidence suggests founder Dr. Joseph Mercola consulted with a psychic before making a move. That's not uncommon. People will do that. People will consult astrologers. But it's one of the people he fires as his sister. And the source is a little weird. Okay, let me keep going. Top executives at Mercola, the brand founded by the controversial COVID anti-vaxxer Dr. Joseph Mercola, were terminated last week without notice. And evidence has surfaced that the doctor is taking direction from a man who claims to channel the voice of an ancient and wise high vibration entity from the causal plane. An email that appears to be written by Mercola and shared with a reporter for this story also includes language suggesting the firings were related to the executive's religious beliefs. So supposedly, these executives were Catholics. Mercola did not respond to repeated requests for comment. Mercola products are sold online in major retail chains, and the brand boasts an outsized presence in social media, driven by Mercola's outspoken views on health and medicine. In hours of video discovered online, Mercola converses with a man going by the name of Kai Clay, who speaks as though he is the voice of the entity referred to as Balan. Clay, with his eyes closed as if in trance, talks with Mercola about his business and spiritual matters in a rambling conversation that the doctor claims will be the basis of a series of books he plans to publish. In a video of Mercola that was shared with the brand's employees February 12th, the doctor described a 12-book series as a new beginning for the company and declared that my goal is to reach billions, literally billions around the world with a new paradigm of how to increase joy in their life. The February 12th video came 5 days after 3 top executives, CEO Steve Rye, Chief Business Officer Ryan Boland, Chief Editor Janet Selvig, Mercola's sister, received termination letters signed by Laura Berry, who had not worked at the company, but claimed in the letter she was the new Mercola CEO. In the February 12th video, Mercola announced he will visit the offices on February 14th with my new CEO, who's a brilliant, unbelievable woman who's going to take us to the next level, but offers no name. He also promises a surprise guest who will be the company's chief operating officer. Mercola's brand has found success online and in brick and mortar, including the massive Kroger chain. Much of the appeal built on deep social media presence, with the doctor claiming 2 million followers. NHP Innovations, LLC, the corporation behind the Mercola brand, employs 150 people in its Florida offices and contracts with dozens of co-manufacturers to produce more than 14,000 products. The brand has been praised for high quality and rigorous supply chain standards. As a public figure, Mercola has attracted no shortage of controversy, with critics taking particular issue with his views on COVID vaccinations. Mercola was included in the disinformation dozen by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, and the New York Times labeled him the most influential spreader of coronavirus misinformation online. Mercola was banned from YouTube for his anti-vaccine views. He has 1.7 million followers on Facebook and 415,000 followers on Twitter. So I wonder how much of the pressure that Mercola went through during that time ultimately winds up having him take this really radical change of course. Troubling signs. In a February 12th telephone interview, Selvig described the situation with the brother as evolving after she began noticing odd language in his emails in late 2023. She later learned Mercola had been consulting with Kai Clay as Balon for several months. Clay and the doctor were both advertised as speakers at an event on November 19th, 2023 at Sacred Space Miami. Clay is described as a master trance channel on balon.com, where he offers readings. An affiliate program described on the site promises payment to followers who bring him more reading clients. Promotional postings on other sites claim he has worked with celebrities and helps CEOs and entrepreneurs create competitive business strategies, but no names are shared. Selvig said she confronted her brother about the odd behavior on January 31st. After seeing hours of videos of his trance channeling sessions with Balon, I just felt immediately that he was being taken advantage of, Selvig said. The confrontation did not go well. Selvig said her brother was very dismissive of her concerns and defended his work with Clay. He thinks the book is going to save the world, Selvig said. He believes that he's a god and he's been reincarnated. And he's even referred to himself as the new Jesus. So, how different is Joseph Mercola from Eric Adams? Right? I bet Eric Adams kind of sees himself as a 33rd degree Mason with all that chocolate running the biggest city in the world as a god. Right? But now he's got competition here with Mercola, who sees himself as the new Jesus. On February 2nd, Selvig was shown an email to a co-worker from Mercola's address announcing the doctor's intention to fire Selvig, Rye, Boland, and a fourth executive. The email offered the CEO spot to a different Mercola team member who later turned down the position. The email went on to explain reasons for the mutiny, describing the Catholic Church as a global cabal that controls 50% of the world's worth and created all the pain that most people experience. The email added that Rye, Boland, Selvig, and the fourth executive have strong commitments to the Catholic Church. The group who I'm now working with is committed to liberating their wealth and control to the people and give them back their freedom. I hope you will join me in this noble anti-crusade against them, the email. So essentially, Mercola is going to take on the Catholic Church, apparently. And he is going to bring the Catholic Church down and return the wealth stolen by the Catholic Church. And it is through the wisdom of Balon, and that's how it's going to happen, apparently. So the information on Nucia Laura Berry has not been provided. A reporter for the story reached out via email to the address used in the termination letter, but has not resulted in reply. Information about Kai Clay is easier to find, but his actual identity is not clear. LinkedIn profiles for Clay and Christopher Johnson share photos of the same man that appear to have been taken at the same time. The photos match the man identified as Clay at Balon. So he's not even Kai Clay, he's Christopher Johnson. The Christopher Johnson profile includes claims of employment with Whitehorn dating to 2005. A website for Whitehorn Group describes Chris's approach to value creation, but offers little information and does not list a full name. Two people listed as Johnson connections on LinkedIn say they don't know who he is. In the profile, Johnson claims to be appointed to the U.S. Afghan Women's Council and describes the organization as being formed by Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, and Rula Ghani, the former First Lady of Afghanistan. On her LinkedIn profile, a woman thought to be the new Mercola CEO Laura Berry, also claims to be on the U.S. Afghans Women's Council, but she describes it as established by George Bush and Afghan President Hamid Karzai. The council webpage does not reference Johnson or Berry. The LinkedIn profile for Kai Clay declares he has been the owner of Spiritual Mind since 1999 and lists no other employment. Skills noted in the profile include spiritual coaching and spiritual gifts. Promotional information on Balan.com appears misleading. The headline on the site refers to LA Weekly labeling Balan as the psychic, but a Google search turns up what appears to be a promotional piece on LA Weekly and not an article from the publication. Descriptions of Balan and the psychic services on other written sites appear similarly promotional. What is clear is that Clay Christopher Johnson has cultivated a deep relationship with Mercola. In hours of conversation, Clay advises Mercola on spiritual matters and also discusses the Mercola business. Between quasi-spiritual language like all you're doing is returning that which is you to that which is you in the first place, Clay talks to him about new enterprises and efforts Mercola can launch. In the video sent to employees February 12th, Mercola spoke of a new business partner in Miami and referred to elaborate and ambitious plans. We're in the process of creating medical clinics all over the entire country that's going to change the whole system. Selvig is worried that Mercola is being isolated and manipulated. When she spoke to him after she saw the February 2nd letter discussing her termination and denouncing Catholicism, he dismissed her concerns. He said, well, I could see how you would think that, but I'm fine. And I'm going to save the world with this. I don't know what's taking you so long to get on board and edit the book. I hear your concerns, but I'm not going to debate you. According to Selvig, Mercola exhorted her to join this noble crusade. She did not sign on. So this goes on. And this is really, again, a very interesting story. And, you know, how different, right, is in some ways Kai Clay, Christopher Johnson, Balan from Eric Adams. You know, it clearly Mercola is under some kind of, he's under some kind of spell, right? This is very, very cultic behavior. Very cultic behavior. I'd be very surprised. And you can go online and you can listen to Balan. He talks in this fucking gibberish. I'd be very surprised if this company, if this management team, and he continues to take advice from this channel, I'd be very surprised if it's still around in 3 years. This has all the markings of an absolute disaster in the making. And you have to ask yourself, right? Like, did this guy like infiltrate Mercola's world? Kai Clark and Balan have psychic services all over the country. And if you live in Austin, you can avail yourself of them. There are Balan psychics waiting to talk to you right now in Austin. I mean, again, if you look at Eric Adams, what is he doing? He's creating a bit of a cult, right? And his cult are his followers inside the city government. His cult are the people that he's giving these low interest or no interest or unrepayable loans to, right? That's how you start a cult. And then you have these followers that are beholden to you. And then what happens? Well, in Eric Adams' case, they hate me, right? They hate me because look at all this chocolate and look at all this. That's why they hate me. So that language is cultic language, because what that does is that it essentially takes the people that he's addressing in that room, right, or in that communication who are listening to him and have bought into his trip, for lack of a better term. And he's making them feel inclusive. right? And then he creates an enemy on the outside. This is like cult dynamics 101. They even use this in sports. Like when Bill Walsh was the coach of the 49ers, he kind of created a cult-like vibe for a while with the 49ers. And he used the media as the it's us versus them, right? And we got to stick together. So he turned the media into the bad guy, which, sometimes that's true, right? But that's what this is what cults do. They create a sense of insularity, and that there's somebody on the outside of that circle of trust that despises them or wants to break them up or wants to dispel them of their notion that they are somehow privileged, right? So in Eric Adams' case, it's what I would call economic and political privilege. In the case of Mercola, right, it's this idea that there's a spiritual privilege to be involved with Kai and the Balan. And then the people who are on the outside, i.e., the Catholic Church or members of his own family, they're the enemy, right? They're the ones that want to tear everything down. They're the ones that are in control of 50% of the world's wealth. They're the ones that have created the great schism in humanity, through their, and some people say, hey, he's not fucking wrong, right? But this is what happens. And you could use any group. You could use any group and it would have the same effect. So in a weird way, what you're looking at with Eric Adams and the cult of Eric Adams inside of New York City's government and the perks that people get either through by appointment or through money, right? Those are all the incentives to be a part of that cult. And it's exclusionary. See, that's the thing about cults, is that it's exclusionary. That's how they operate. Jim Jones was great at being exclusionary. Oh, they want to take you away, or they want to take you back to your family, and he would rail on society. He would rail on capitalism, right? Because Jim Jones, in a weird way, was also a socialist. But they create the exclusionary pact, and that the other is the thing that fuels, right? It fuels their sense of belonging and camaraderie. So in some ways, they're not too dissimilar in terms of how they're approaching their stated goals through some form of manipulation. One is clearly monetary and positional, right? And it's inclusionary within a certain group, exclusionary with another group that theoretically thinks that they hate that group for all the things that they've done. And the other, because there's this wicked force in the world, which is, the problems of all the world's ills. It's not dissimilar. And if you just go with Joe and Balan, well, join the crusade, right? To the victor go the spoils. Same thing with Eric Adams, although that might be a little more exclusionary in its own regard. So I just wanted to bring these two things up because I thought that they were interesting. And even as a contrast to the painter, and this weird sort of predictive programming and hidden in plain sight stuff with that movie, White Man's Burden, right? It's like, oh, look, that dude in that truck could have been that character from that movie. How did we get here? How did that happen? And where's it all going? And is there an alternative? Well, go down to King Randall's part of the world, and clearly there's an alternative. Some hardworking motherfuckers and learning how to take care of themselves, have self-respect, self-esteem, and not necessarily be, gatekeepers of the system, who at some point will ultimately become disposable. And that's something that Eric Adams just does not understand. He may think he's the king of New York. At the end of the day, if their revolution, is complete and it works, he'll be one of the first guys to go. He'll be gone. All the useful dupes, they'll be gone. Just watch Yuri Bezmenov. All right, we did it. We got here. Thank you for being here. I was a little kind of under the weather and didn't have a ton of energy coming into the show today. And I hope you got something out of it. I hope you learned a few things. I hope that you were able to, develop your own questions around some of the things that we take for granted in this world. And there's one thing that I do want to share and end the show with. And at the end of the video, he says that no matter, what color or what political group you are, we have to help each other. And I agree with that. I think that's a salient message. And I know a lot of you help where you can. And if we're going to get through this time, we're going to have to do it. Right? I mean, again, look at that guy, King Randall. What are they doing? They're helping each other. He started that whole thing with no money. Well, I don't think he takes any money at all. He doesn't want any money, right? We have to help each other. And to that extent, God bless you all. Love you. Have a great day. Have a great solstice. Enjoy the beauty of the moon tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow, Sunday night, with Sunday Night Astro Live. Oh, okay. I got one more announcement before I go. It's going to be in the newsletter, and I'm going to put it over on Locals. Darlena is going to be with us on Sunday night, over on Sunday Night Astro Live for about the first half hour of the show. And she is offering a 7-week course that I think is going to be phenomenal. And it's going to be kind of a linkage between astrology and human design. So it leads you into level 1 with human design. But there are 2 cool things that she is building into this 7-week course. One is that in the middle of the course, everybody has an incarnational cross in human design. So as you go through the material, 7 weeks worth of material, in the middle, every single person is going to get their own incarnational cross reading from Darlena. And at the end of the 7-week course, you're going to get your own personalized human design reading from Darlena as well. So the value is through the roof, right? You're going to learn a lot about human design. You're going to learn about some of the interstitial connections with astrology. You're going to have 2 personal readings. You're going to get to meet with her online and ask her questions after you go through the course material. It's going to be really great. So she'll be on the show on Sunday night to tell you more about it. And people who watch this show, who are part of the 11th house, who are part of Chattaria, you get a discount. And it's a significant one. So please join me on Sunday night for the return of Darlena and whatever else we cook up in the world of astrology. Take good care. Love you all. Bye for now.